Good people, good people, good people. Welcome back to the Gumtown Podcast, episode 179. I'm Doug B. If you tuned in to this podcast, thank you for your time and your attention. I really appreciate you giving it a shot. Today's guest is the founder and owner of Murray Law Group, LLC. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I'm sure we'll all be inspired by her story. Let's chop it up with LaConya Murray, Esquire. LaConya, how's it going?
It's going awesome. Very glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Glad to hear that and glad you took a little time out your schedule to chop it up with me. I really appreciate you giving me some of your time.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, here to talk about all the great things you got going on with Off the Mark IP Solutions and all other business ventures you have your hands in. But before we talk business, let's get to know the woman behind the brand. Born and raised in North Alabama, what was your upbringing like?
It was a little bit all over the place. I always tell people that the first time that I started a school and finished a school, I was in high school. Every other, year I was at a different school doing something different because my parents were in the military. So, my mom's from Decatur, Alabama. My dad's from Belle Glade, Florida, and it's pretty cool. My mom has a really big family, so I had a lot of support coming up. I was always in the books. I love, love, love reading. Like, you know how the kids have their face in the phone all the time and walking in their phone. That's how I was with books. So my people, they saw me, my family saw me and said, "Hey, you're going to be a lawyer." And I was like, "Okay, cool." But it tracked. I wanted so I've known what I wanted to do from a very early age, maybe like seventh grade, that I wanted to be an attorney. And then when I got to high school, I knew I wanted to help business owners. I had no idea what that looked like because I'm older and we didn't have the internet. But I just had something in me that said, "Hey, I want to help business owners. I don't want to work for a big law firm or big, help big corporations. I want to help small business owners." And it had to be God because, again, I wasn't exposed to that. I'm the only lawyer in my family. Um, so I wasn't, and the first time I met a lawyer, I think I was in law school. So I didn't have that type of exposure outside of Claire Huxtable and Maxine Shaw from, Cosby Show and Living Single. But yeah, that's how I kind of wanted to be a lawyer and how I kind of got here.
No, that makes sense. I appreciate you for sharing your background and just hearing you talk about moving from school to school and being in that military lifestyle. I know for sure without saying you definitely have the ability to adapt and adjust because you had to moving from school to school all the time. So that's a great life skill to have. Of course, sure at the time, it probably didn't make sense at the time while you were going through it, but I'm pretty sure your ability to adapt and adjust and doing that in your childhood, I'm pretty sure it has served you in your life.
Very well. Very well. It absolutely has.
Okay, sounds good. And also that part where you just talking about you knew what you wanted to be since you were a child. And I think that's great that you spoke those things, you knew exactly what that was going to be, and you became that. And just hearing you talk about Claire Huxtable and Maxine Shaw, it really takes me back to that time when TV, like when representation, like man, when we were black excellence, like that was a time. What a time.
It was, absolutely was. I do want to say this, just for anyone who might need to hear it out there. Even though I knew what I wanted to do at an early age, my path getting here, it wasn't straight. So it's not like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. So, I graduated high school, went to college, went to law school, and did all the things. That's not how I got here. I took the long way around, and I'm sharing that because I want people to know that it's okay, that life happens and no, not right now isn't necessarily a no.
No, that's the truth. Delayed but not denied. That's exactly.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am. That's spot on, and I appreciate you for sharing that. And quite honestly, I mean that journey that you went on, the long way you're speaking about, I'm pretty sure you learned a lot of valuable lessons that you wouldn't have learned had you been able to go in a linear path. Finish high school, go to college, go to law school, because none of the things we go through make sense at the time. But after you go through them, you're like, you know what? I'm glad I went through it that way because I wouldn't have learned this skill or I wouldn't have met that person had I gone another route.
Absolutely. For me, it was, oh my goodness, it was perfect timing because if I would have went to school and graduated, quote unquote, when I was supposed to, I would have been too early for this technology boom that we were in. Because for me, the social media helped my business so much because I don't just work with people from Alabama. I work with clients throughout the United States. So having things like Periscope helped me get my law firm in front of thousands of people versus, trying to do it the traditional way, which takes a lot of money. With social media, you didn't have to have money. You just had to have a mic and a camera. So I always say it was perfect. It was definitely God's timing.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And that's great that you are leveraging technology and, like you said, social media to promote your business so you don't just limit yourself to Alabama. Like, that's what it's all about. I know these days, social media, it's what you make it. I mean, unfortunately, you have a group of people who only use it to distract themselves and make the time pass by. And you have people like yourself who actually leverage technology and use it for positive and use it to promote your business and market yourself. So I appreciate you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. So, just in terms of that journey, so when you got out of high school, did you go straight to college? Did you do military? Did you go to work? What did you do after you finished up high school?
So as far away from Madison as I could. So I packed up and went to Berea College. Stayed there for a year. Should have stayed there all 4 years because Berea College, if you're not familiar with it, it's a work study school. So you don't pay tuition. Every student on campus has a work study job, and you pay for college with your Pell Grant. If it exceeds your Pell Grant, like you don't have any debt when you graduate Berea College. I should have stayed there, but I didn't. After a year, I came to Birmingham and went to UAB. While I was at UAB, I had my first daughter, junior in college. So it took me about an extra year to graduate undergrad. And then after undergrad, I worked. I worked for apartment complex. Went to Colonial and I stayed there for, I guess, 4 years. But even during that time, I was studying for the LSAT. Wasn't scoring high enough to get accepted into law school, but I never gave up. Like I always said, I'm going to law school. Like it didn't even cross my mind that I couldn't do it, that I wouldn't do it, even though I kept getting all these no's, which is bananas, right? But yeah, so did that, went to Colonial for 4 years, was working as an assistant manager when a resident came in and was like, "Hey, I'm putting in my notice and I'm moving to Montgomery." I said, "Well, why are you doing that? You're in law school. Why are you leaving law school?" She says, "Well, I'm transferring to Jones in Montgomery." I said, "But they're not accredited." She said, "Oh, they're accredited. They have their accreditation now." And so she left, and I looked into it, and sure enough, they were accredited. And about a month later, I was enrolled. So it worked out. And they have a part-time program at the time. So it worked out because what I didn't know, my husband and I was pregnant again. I always tell him I'm never going back to school. I'm never going back to school because every time I go to school, I have a kid. And I had two while I was in law school.
Wow.
So
I
yeah.
appreciate you for sharing that. I mean, and just hearing that journey, finishing up high school, going to Berea College, and making that transition to Birmingham, and now in Montgomery. So just when you, man, that's I'm just kind of lost for words. Like there's a lot of take a lot of courage, a lot of audacity, but it goes back to your upbringing, like we were talking about that ability to adapt and pivot, and just those skills and how they came to fruition in your adult life, and just being able to pick up and pack and move and stuff like that. Because change is tough and change is scary, but change never scared LaConya. You just kept rocking and rolling.
Well, shoot, I'm not gonna say it didn't scare me. It didn't stop me.
Right.
It was definitely a little scary, but it didn't stop me because I literally had a vision. Like I saw it. I've seen it for years since I was what 12 years old. And when the opportunity presented itself, I just went ahead and kicked that door wide open, scared and all, because I'm coming to a city. We have one kid. Matter of fact, didn't even know we were pregnant until after we closed on the house. And our realtor gave us a housewarming gift. And then she was like, "Oh, you can use this room for a nursery." I'm like, "No, this is my office. This is where I'm going to study and do all the things." And she was like, "Ha, ha, no." Like she knew I was pregnant. Um, but it's just like when I think about the journey, when I think about how I got here, I wake up and I'm so grateful. Like I practice meditation and prayer and gratitude, and one of the things I'm always grateful for is like, God, thank you for letting me do what you told me I was going to do. And I don't take that for granted.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Gratitude is definitely the attitude, and that's what it's all about. Just being able to thank God for the journey, everything you've learned, all the people you've met, and just where you are currently. And I think that's great. So, upon making the transition from Birmingham to Montgomery, I got to ask you, did you experience any type of cultural shock? Did anything about Montgomery catch you off guard when you got
Dude,
here?
dude, dude, dude. Because why? Oh
Right,
man, I expected so much more
right,
because Montgomery is the capital, not taking into account that, you know, a lot of the war and things happened here. And then you had civil rights. I always say you can tell that the civil rights movement came through Montgomery because you can still feel that tension. You can still feel that tension in 2025.
right,
You can still feel that tension in 2025. Um, and that's unfortunate.
right,
But that was the biggest culture shock is that um just how some people perceive me because of the color of my skin.
right,
And I hadn't really, again, I'm from Alabama, right?
right,
So, but I hadn't really experienced that until I moved here. People thinking less of me and having lower expectations in the type of jobs, not just me, like even my husband, who has years of experience in civil engineering and construction and things, like them trying to pigeonhole us into certain positions. And it was just that was just a wow for me. But that was also a while ago, so I will say that I don't have those challenges now, mainly because for a long time I stayed to myself. I tell people all the time, I just started leaving my house like last year.
wow,
Um, and that's because and it's not because of Montgomery, it's just I'm an introvert. And and then I was building a business too. So at one point, I remember a couple of days like where I just didn't sleep because between school, work, and trying to build something, I just couldn't sleep. And then babies, like if there was no sleep.
mm,
So I spent a lot of time in building mode and I finally decided to leave the house. And I'll tell you, I like it out there. It's cool. I've met some cool people in Montgomery, and I feel like I'm here for a reason as well. I feel like I'm in Montgomery because I had, and I believe like I'm here for a reason because our intentions were to leave. That's one of the reasons I have a federal practice is because I said, oh, I want a law practice where I can help business owners, but I can also just pick up and leave when it's time to go. So did some research and I was like, intellectual property is good, especially for our community where we're always where people are always taking stuff that they don't have any business taking. And that's mainly because we don't understand the value of intellectual property, don't understand the value of what we're creating. So a lot of times it's not even that people are taking it, we just give it away. So if you look at my platform, you notice there's a lot of education on there, educating people on the value of the intellectual property that they're creating. But yeah, I have a intellectual property platform or law firm because I thought I was leaving, but I'm still here. And I know that I'm still here because there's work that I'm supposed to do in this community.
yes, ma'am, absolutely, and I appreciate you for sharing that. And you're spot on, just in terms of the tension that still exists here. I'm born and raised in Montgomery, so I know exactly what you're talking about, and spot on. So I know that was a culture shock, but hey, like you said, you were able to overcome it, and you built your business, kept your head down, did what you had to do. Wife, mom, had your 9 to 5, building your business. So you didn't necessarily have the time or the bandwidth to be outside like that. You had to do what you had to do. You had to build your company up. So I appreciate you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yes, ma'am. So let's talk about what you got going on as an entrepreneur. It's off the mark.
Yeah, off the
Off the
mark. Off the mark is my law firm. Um, we help people throughout the United States protect their brands through trademarks, copyrights, and contracts. When I first started my law firm, it was the Murray Law Group. Matter of fact, my LLC is the Murray Law Group LLC, but we were a threshold law practice. If you walked over the threshold, I would help you, criminal, family, disability, and it just did not make my heart happy at all. I did not like it at all. I like being good at what I do, and I found it difficult to know everything about all these different areas of law, right? How am I going to be an expert in criminal law and an expert in family law and an expert in disability law? Because there's so many nuances in all of it. So, and then plus it wasn't helping business owners. So, about 2 years, about a year, and it makes my heart happy. I have the best clients, and I love the work that I do. It makes my heart very happy.
Yes, ma'am. That's absolutely. And maybe that was my internet that cut out. I think it was, but you saying about a year ago what happened? My apologies.
Let me think, what happened a year ago? Oh, no, I was saying that about a year after I started my practice is when I niched down. I niched down to doing what I do now with off the market IP solutions and helping clients with their trademarks and copyrights. And it just makes my heart super happy. And I have the best clients in the world.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate you for sharing that. And hey, hats off to you for having that awareness that it was time to niche down and actually following through. Because a lot of times, again, it goes back to that pivot and that change and being willing to change. So that's great that you were able to identify that you wanted to specialize. So, and it sounds like you're happy with that decision. Like you said, you're happy and you got the best clients in the world.
Yes, but baby, we talking about scared. No, because and the way that I did it, I on the front end, all I did was advertise LaConya Murray, small business attorney. I mean, everybody that will listen, that's what I said. But on the back end, I was still doing some of my criminal contracts and things of that nature because that's what kept the food on the table. And it was scary because I know that the people need this, but at the time, trademarks weren't but wasn't a buzzword. So people didn't quite understand what I was doing. So I would just sit here and the phone would not ring. Oh, and that was scary.
Hmm.
But like I said, I mean, then I went to a conference. I hired a coach. I hired a coach who essentially was like, ma'am, get your business plan out of your head and on paper. And with that, I was able to see some shifts and changes, and it took off from there.
Hmm. Hey, and again, that awareness, that willingness, you hired a coach. That's powerful because if you had kept going down your route, doing things your way, you probably would have missed out on some key information. That's it's power in having a mentor around because they see all your blind spots. And a lot of times they hold a mirror up to you and you don't necessarily like what you see, but they're gonna tell you what you need to hear to get to the next level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's definitely value in that. There's definitely value in that. You have to be, like we always tell our kids, you have to be coachable. You have to be people and take constructive criticism and be accountable for your actions or non-actions, especially in business.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's great that you got great things going on with Off the Mark IP solution, having that awareness to niche down and what you got going on present day, just in trademarking realm. And also I was just reading your bio and just looking at the company's mission and I think it's so powerful that the mission is so clear and it's so concise and it's straight to the point and just that mission of helping the African American community gain the freedom, independence, and wealth it needs to combat the racial and social injustice it faces daily, providing access to resources that help them build better business in their own genius. That's so powerful. It's
Yeah, I'm a big believer in not begging people to play in their sandbox when I can build my own.
I like that. I like that. That's how you do it. Hey, build your own sandbox, and that's great that that's the company's mission to help our people because let's call it what it is. We're at a disadvantage a lot of times, not because we lack the competence. We don't necessarily have the information.
Mhm.
So that's good that you're providing this platform that you decided to come into this realm, come into this law field and be that solution for our people. That's powerful.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So whenever I have entrepreneurs on the platform like yourself, I like to talk about three things: the aha moment, action, and audacity. So you being a serial entrepreneur, just take us back to your aha moment when you had the idea to take your love for helping people, turn it into this business that you have present day.
Aha. I feel like there's so many ahas. My first one was when I was working for an attorney, like my first job while I was in law school, and then after I graduated, and I was working for an attorney, and I was like, hey, I want to do this, basically have my own website and, pitch my own services. And his wife was like, well, you work here, so that's not going to work. I was like, oh yeah. So it's like, aha, like you gotta if this is what you really want to do, you're really going to have to do it. Like you can't be scared and trying to hold on to the safety of that check. So it's like, okay, uh-huh. I do have to, I'm going to do it. I have to do it. Okay.
That makes sense. I mean, basically, had your aha moment, and just out of the company you're working for telling you you couldn't market your services, it sounds like you did what you had to do. I mean, like you did it out of necessity. Like your aha moment was, I want to do this. I can't do it under this umbrella. So here's my opportunity to step out there.
Yeah, because trying to do it that way because I was scared. Mind you, remember, from the time I was 12, I knew I wanted to be an attorney. By the time I got to high school, I knew I wanted to have my own practice. So I already knew what I wanted, but I was scared to go out there and do it. So that aha was, ma'am, you can't do that here. If you're going to stop being scared and just go ahead and do what you need to do.
Mm. Yes, ma'am. That's powerful stuff. So from that time you had the aha moment and you realized it was time to make that transition. Let's talk about action. How long did it take you before you made the transition and left the 9 to 5 world and ventured off on your own?
Oh, not long at all. Probably had that conversation in about February and August. I was opening up my own practice.
That's what I'm talking about. You didn't spend a lot of time at all. You got right to it. You said, "Hey, I can't play in your sandbox. I'm gonna build my own," like you were saying earlier. So that's great. That's great that you took that action.
And
Yes, ma'am.
And mind you, like they were great about it. Like it wasn't any animosity. It's just that I had a different vision for what I wanted to do, and what type of law I wanted to practice and things of that nature. But I'm forever grateful for that. It's actually my second law job. The first law job, I think they just wanted me to answer the phone. I couldn't do any legal work and it was terrible. But this job here, I mean, the connections that he and the people that I was introduced to, the work that I got to do, like, and just seeing how small law firm was run, it was, like I said, forever grateful for that opportunity.
Yes,
Forever
ma'am.
grateful.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely, absolutely, and that's great that you had that awareness that you wanted to step out there and do what you had to do, and that's great. As far as the action portion, did spend a lot of time thinking. You had a plan. You'd known this since you were a child, preteen, teenager, so you already knew what you wanted to do. So taking the action wasn't necessarily the big deal. You did it scared. Came from up under the 9 to 5 umbrella, the infrastructure, and jumped out there on your own. And pretty sure you don't regret that decision.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all.
Ma'am. So the last portion, audacity, is one thing to have an idea. It's another thing, action behind the idea. But to put the idea out to the world to be praised or criticized, that's where the audacity, in my opinion. Who or what gave you that courage, that audacity, Murray Law Group LLC out to be praised or criticized?
See, my dad had a big part to play in that. He's very, very supportive. My husband, when I told him what I wanted to do, he was like, "Okay, bet. Let's do it." So having people that support me in that way, even though, having people support your vision, even when it's not their vision, even when they don't understand all the ins and out of it, it's really helpful. And it did give me the audacity to go out and to do it.
Yes, ma'am. That's powerful stuff. Sounds like that village we always hear about. You know, they always say it takes a village, but we typically only hear it in the context of when we're children. But it takes a village at all levels in life. And hats off to your village, your dad, your husband, encouraging you, motivating you, giving you that inspiration, that audacity to step out there. It's powerful.
Yes. Community is important. I'm learning that. I'm learning that as I'm stepping outside and peopling more, the importance of community and just the value in that. And I'm thinking that this is the season that a lot of us are going to step back into community, um, because that's where our safe space is going to be as far as everything else that's going on in the world.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Speaking of community, let's talk about Mark Legal, the community that you've created. What is it and what you got going on with Mark Legal?
Yes, Mart Legal is my baby. I love Mart Legal. So, like I said, education is the foundation of what I do. I have so much content. Anytime I work with marketers, they're like, they look at what I have and like, oh my gosh, you don't have to worry about content. We have the content because we do. I have a podcast, I write blogs, I just believe in making sure that people have what they need to make informed decisions. But also with that, people want to utilize my services. They want to work with me, but they can't afford to work with me. So I was trying to figure out a way to kind of bridge that gap for early stage entrepreneurs, people who are just starting out, maybe less than 5 years, and the high cost of legal services. What can we do to make sure that those people who are just starting out aren't putting their business in jeopardy because they don't have the right things in place, especially as it relates to contracts or even forming their business. So that's where Mark Legal came in. I've actually had this platform since 2020. The people that I provide ongoing legal support to, um, through my Genius Insight program, through Off the Mark, they've had access to these contract templates and workshops and things, but now I'm making it available to other people. And right now we're in beta and it's $49 a month and you have access to contract templates. Right now, I think we have like 12 contract templates. And it's not just like, okay, here's a contract template and I'm going to just download this Word document and hope for the best. No, there's instructional videos telling you like what this document is for and what it means, and like a questionnaire to help you fill it out. That's one of the biggest problems with DIY sites is the lack of education. It's not advice, but you can educate people on what this stuff is so they can make informed decisions. I'm all about informed decisions. So you have the contract templates, you have legal workshops. I just finished one, published one last weekend on forming an LLC in Alabama. It walks you through reserving your name, forming the LLC, and what happens after you form the LLC and operating agreement and all that good stuff. You have access to that stuff for free. We add a new workshop once a month, and we're going to add about six more templates to the contract suite. So $49 a month, and you get discount legal services. I'm not legal services, but discount legal consultations. My consultations are $199. But for our Mark Legal subscribers, they're only $47. So that's my way of trying to make the law more accessible to people who are just starting out.
And that's powerful. And that community that you're building over there with Mark Legal sounds like a great community that's do great things. Like you said, just providing that the resources, and not only providing the resources, but most importantly, streamlining the process and putting it, packaging the resources for our people for their businesses and things like that. Like I think that's important because I there's not a shortage of information out there. A lot of times we just don't necessarily have it streamlined or packaged in a way that we can understand it and follow along. But that's great that you've created this community for people who can't necessarily afford your services, but they still can have access to you in some shape, form, or fashion. That's amazing.
Absolutely. And we make sure we don't talk legalese. I think the biggest compliment that I got a few years ago is that, man, you make this stuff so relatable. And I'm like, thank you. You're like reliable and relatable. I was like, thank you so very much. Yes, that's exactly what we are.
Yeah, that's powerful. And it just goes back to what you were saying earlier, just being all about education and community. So that's great that you have created that community, and I have no doubt it'll continue to grow and people will continue to be blessed and benefit greatly from what you're putting together. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So let's talk about your podcast. Listen to Your Own Genius podcast. Did I get that
No,
right?
own your own gene, own
Own
your
your
genius.
Oh,
Yes,
my
own your
apologies.
genius.
My
No, no worries.
apologies. Okay, listen to the. Okay, there it is. Because I'm on your website. On Your
Oh,
Genius podcast. My apologies. So I was reading
yeah.
out in its entirety. So On Your Genius podcast. So what inspired you to want to come into this podcasting space?
I wanted to create content, and if I'm being honest, I wanted to be a little lazy about it. I didn't want to put my face on camera because when you do that, you got to put yourself together. And I was like, oh, I can put on turn on the mic and talk without having to do my face up and look like a person. So let's do that. But then about a year or so ago, my content admin was like, ma'am, I need you to turn your camera on, which is fine. But I really like the podcast because it's just another way of getting information out there. A lot of people don't want to sit and read. Some people don't want to get on YouTube. They want to just listen. So it's just another way of getting information and reaching the people. We talk about business. We talk about intellectual property. We talk about mindset. I'm a big believer in owning your genius. So for us, a genius, if you will, is someone who's using their education and their experiences to create dope businesses. So own your genius, own that education, own that experience, own who you are. That's going to help you create this legacy and build this business that's going to create this freedom for you and your family.
Hmm. I like that. That's amazing. That's a very organic way how you came up with the name. But that was gonna be my next question. Like, how did you come about coming up with the name and pretty much just broke that down? I think that's amazing. And that's great that you came into this podcasting space to provide to add value. And I know it's easy to get discouraged with this podcasting space. There's so many podcasts out there, but one thing that helped me come into this space and get over that whole fear of it was
Mhm.
no two people are alike. We all have our own different flavors, so no two podcasts sound just alike. So I commend you for coming into this space and own your genius.
Thank you very much. And you're absolutely correct because every time I think about like ugh, nobody's listening, nobody, because it doesn't get very much engagement. But whenever I talk to people, they're like, hey, I listened to your podcast and it was great. Like, I love that episode on blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, you listened to that? Oh, okay, cool. I'll keep going.
Yes, ma'am. Because believe it or not, well, you know it now. People are watching, people are listening. They might not like, they might not subscribe, but people are paying attention.
Yeah, that's what I'm definitely learning. So my and my dad told me that my voice has power and he told me my voice is necessary.
Mm.
Like I have to use my voice. I said, okay.
Ma'am, absolutely. So with all that you have on your plate, entrepreneur, wife, mom, you got a lot on your plate, LaConya. I gotta ask you, how do you decompress? What do you do to get away from all this hustle and bustle?
I read. I've started back reading for fun. I think I started that about 2 years ago. I actually started a book club. Um, I'm leaving my house more, so I go and I hang out with friends. But the reading is very helpful. And when I say reading, I'm not reading business books and things like that. I'm reading fantasy books. I'm reading fun stuff, things that I don't have to think. It's just an escape, and that is my and then I am a big believer in taking at least quarterly solo trips. I don't care if it's a staycation, I'm going somewhere, booking a room by myself, booking a massage, and decompressing.
Mm. Yes, ma'am. That's what I'm talking about. Having those ways to escape and get away from it all and everything you named. Powerful stuff. Reading is therapeutic. Getting out the house, getting outside, taking those solo trips when you got to. Hey, it's great that you have those safe havens, those go-tos, because it's vitally important. Because otherwise, if you just always working, grinding, you'll burn out. But it's great that you have those escapes to prevent burnout.
Yes, and that's something that I just started reading. Like I gave myself permission. It's crazy that you have to give yourself permission to rest and to sit still. I used to feel so guilty about, not working. It's like, okay, I'm sitting here. I know it's after hours. I'm sitting here and I could be doing something, but I'm not doing anything. But no, rest is important. Rest is essential to us being the best version of ourselves.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you've done great things as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure you'll continue to do great things for my next portion, vision. What are some of your short-term and long-term goals in this entrepreneurial space you feel comfortable sharing?
My short-term goal. So I've been telling everyone I'm making $1 million this year. I am. Mart Legal is going to help so many people. We officially launched it in February, but my goal is to have 1,000 subscribers and helping these small business owners get the legal help that they need. That is my short-term goal. My long-term goal is to transition off the mark to where I'm only working with my Genius Insiders, the clients that I provide ongoing legal support to, because I love, love, love that. And so my goal is to work with 20 of those people, 20 Genius Insiders, while also building Mart Legal to work with tens of thousands of early stage entrepreneurs.
Yes, ma'am. Those are great goals, both short-term and long-term, and I have no doubt you'll make them all come to fruition.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. As we wrap up the podcast, I want to ask $1 million question. I started this
Okay.
podcast because I wanted to highlight the greatness connected to the city of Montgomery. Whether you were born here or lived here for a significant period of your life, be it college, military, or work, living in Montgomery, operating in business in Montgomery, I got to ask you, look, you appreciate the
Mhm.
most about the city of Montgomery?
I appreciate the people. Now that I'm stepping outside, and I do, I've been able to find community here. And we just talked about how important community is. I have friends, which as someone who spent a good part of her life, her early life moving from place to place and not really being able to have those type of relationships. I'm grateful for that. So Montgomery has provided that opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. So, LaConya, how can the people connect with you? What are your social media and website?
I will keep it simple. They can go to LaConyaMurray.com and they can find things about me. They can find things about Off the Mark. They can find things about Mark Legal. And LaConya Murray, my first and last name, is my name on all socials. So I keep it easy breezy.
Yes, ma'am. Too easy. And of course, I'll put all the information in the description of the episode. Hey, LaConya, thanks again for the conversation. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Good people, that concludes another dope episode of the Gumtown Podcast. In the meantime, in between time, y'all know what to do. Be blessed, be safe, but most importantly, have the audacity to be you. Go.